Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-minute Histories videos. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the Montebello Filtration Plant, but I have to start with a thank you to a woman named Martha Hendrickson. Miss Hendrickson wrote a fantastic article about the creation of the filtration plant here at Montebello for the Baltimore County Historical Society's journal. So thank you, Miss Hendrickson. All right, here we go. 1915 is when this plant opens to great national acclaim, but it's got a history, of course, a little bit longer than that. And let's lead up to it with sort of the convergence of three things. And that's the urban progressive movement, the germ theory of disease transmission, and then the city beautiful movement. Let's start with the urban progressive movement. In the years after the Civil War, as industrialization is taking hold, cities across the country are swelling, including Baltimore. We went from a population of 250,000 in 1870 to 500,000 in 1900, an enormous jump. And there were very few sanitation codes, there were no housing codes, there was very little safety net by government for people who needed it. And the progressives were arguing for changes, for reforms to address these. The second sort of convergence is the germ theory of disease transmission. In the same time as the cities were swelling, we had cholera and typhoid and all sorts of diseases like that. And the prevailing theory was those were caused by something called miasma. And that was like foul air. And this foul air would carry the diseases. And if you were wealthy enough, you would build a summer estate away from the city and its miasmic airs to get away from it during the summer especially. And places like Clifton here in Montebello, where I am today, those were built for those reasons. Somewhat ironically, they were built on hillsides with fresh breezes, but they also, the families that did it, dug their own wells. And as they went up and spent the summer drinking clean water from their wells, they got back and they said, well, wow, that fresh air really did it. We didn't get sick. Little beknownst to them that it was really the clean water they were drinking. That changed in 1893 when the city of Lawrence, Massachusetts built a sand filtration plant for drinking water. There were towns in England that had been doing this for hundreds of years, but for whatever reason it didn't catch on. And it worked. Pretty soon after, Louisville, Kentucky built a little bit better of one that rinsed off the sand during the filtration process. They called it mechanical filtration, so that you could process a lot of drinking water pretty quickly. And in that same year, 1893, we had the Chicago World's Fair and the City Beautiful movement. In addition to wonderful pavilions and electric lights that dazzled everybody, the Chicago World's Fair really showed that city planners could create cities that were beautiful and healthy, with parks for recreation and sanitary drinking water and sewage removal. So we were going along, that was 1893, and the light bulbs started to go on, but not very quickly in Baltimore. Let me read you a quote from the Baltimore in 1901. We're having a debate within city government. The Baltimore Sun says, "The statement of health officials that much of the typhoid fever in Baltimore is due to the unfiltered water supply of the city is vigorously combated by the Water Department. Secretary James J. Rood of the Water Board, in speaking of the matter yesterday, said, 'Under present conditions, a filtration plant in this city would not be justified.'" So that's where Baltimore was in 1900. And then came 1904. We had our enormous fire downtown, and in the rebuilding, we built pipes for carrying sewer out and stormwater. That was a big thing, but also carrying drinking water in. So we're starting to change a little bit. And then, but not very quickly, but then came the summer of 1893. And three things happened in 1893. One is the urban progressives held a Congress in Baltimore, really highlighting how far we needed to go. The second was in the summer of 1893, if you turned on your drinking water tap, out would come brown, smelly water. Let me read you another quote from the Baltimore Sun in 1911. And the Sun here says, July 29th, 1911, "When darkness fell last night, there was a string of men, women, and children 3 blocks long, stretching back from the old spring down near Pennsylvania Railroad tracks and the Harlem Avenue crossing, and these persons were patiently waiting for their turn at water. There is plenty of water, but it is muddy and it smells." So that's what was going on. And then the third thing was Mayor Preston gets elected and ousts the members of the water board who are against filtration. So now we start in earnest, and it's 1911, 1912. We had already had drinking water. In the 1850s, it was supplied by the Baltimore Water Company, but it was only available if you could afford it, so not many folks could. In the 1850s, Baltimore City takes over that supply and then builds its first reservoir. We dam up the Jones Falls at what was called Swan Lake, named after Mayor Swan, today called Lake Roland. We pipe it down to a lake in Hamden. Then in the 1870s, we build Druid Lake Reservoir. In the 1880s, we built a drinking water here in Montebello for drinking water, and that's all good, but none of these are filtered. And 1911 points out that although we've got drinking water, it's not very reliable or very safe. So we hire a gentleman named James Armstrong. He had just designed the water filtration plant for New Orleans. Other cities like Cincinnati and Columbus and Harrisburg already have water filtration plants. And ours gets going in earnest in 1912. We have to pick a site, and it comes down to two places. One near Loch Raven. We had dammed up Loch Raven for Lake Montebello. And the other is here at Lake Montebello. And Lake Montebello wins because it's pretty. Let me read you a quote from the report that recommends choosing Lake Montebello. The report concludes, Montebello is an exceedingly attractive spot, and the topography is such, and the grounds around the filters can be parked, made into parks, and made particularly pleasing. So not only did it fit the engineering bill, it was also very pretty. So Armstrong designs this filtration plant, and he does it not just in a sort of engineering utilitarian way, but in a way to fit the City Beautiful movement. The tower building, there's a head house with a tower, and the tower is pretty, but it's also functional. It stores the chemicals that clean the water. We're building a mechanical filtration system. The ponds, the filtering ponds and settling ponds are arranged in a pleasing way. The whole thing is landscaped so that it is an attraction not just for folks who want to see water filtration, but who want to experience a really lovely park as it is today. Final word, the architect was none other than Armstrong. He was the engineer and designer, and he built it in a style that sort of defies easy categorization. Most folks say it's Mission, sort of Spanish Mission, the tile roofs, combined with Italianate. A number of folks call it sort of Frank Lloyd Wright-esque, kind of that sort of Western style. And Armstrong very much drew from his experience in New Orleans and the architecture of New Orleans. All right, today it still is a filtration plant and operating, 100 years going strong, 100 plus years going strong. Mayor Preston, by the way, was so pleased with it in its opening in 1915 that he sent out pamphlets that he had printed up showing how the whole thing works, sending them all over the nation, inviting the world to come. A lot of the world did come, over 2,000 people. So really a success from the very beginning, national acclaim. I'll leave you with the final sort of question that I still have is, why is it called Lake Montebello and the Montebello Filtration Plant? Well, the answer is because we're on the former estate of Sam Smith, General Sam Smith. He was one of the folks who was escaping the miasma of the times, built his estate out here. And his house had long been gone, but he named his estate after the Battle of Montebello. And if you look that up, that's when Napoleon defeats the Austrians in the run-up to when he clinches power to become the ruler of France. So why Sam Smith named his estate after this Napoleonic battle in 1800, I'm not quite sure. If you know the answer, maybe you can let me know and then we'll share it. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.